Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we are test driving the all-new 2024 Chevrolet Trax, the most affordable new car from the brand in a long time. So we're going to have a good look at it inside and out. We're going to take it for a test drive, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. The all-new 2024 Chevrolet Trax is quite a departure from last year's model. It's larger, 178 inches long. It's got a longer wheelbase, 106 inches. It's very much stretched out. It's a little bit lower. It's really more like a car than a short, stubby SUV that it's always been known for. And it looks a lot more premium at that. Now this one starts out at $21,495 for the base level LS. As tested, our top trim grade active is $27,000, and so this is about the most you can spend. This is essentially a fully loaded Trax. Looking at the face, same styling DNA that you see on almost every new model we've seen lately. And look at the hood, a lot of nice sculpting there, a lot of nice creasing. The grille itself has some pretty upscale materials. Now that is partially because we're on the active trim grade. Gloss black trim on the grille, a nice black chrome on the bottom. Coming around the side, this has 18-inch gloss black alloy wheels on this particular one. Wheel sizes on this do range from 17 to 19 inches across the board. There is black cladding like an SUV, even though this does tend to be a little bit more like a car in its form. Now this one does not have a power liftgate at the rear. That's okay, we're in a lower price point. It's not that hard, really, but it's got a nice 3/4 view. It's nice and planted and aggressive looking. And the materials back there again, the black chrome on the bumper and some nice finishing touches like that spoiler at the top. A roof rack on the top. This one does have a sunroof as well. When it comes to the walk around, I think my biggest takeaway is how much larger this is than the previous generation Trax. Gone are the days when the base model from a brand is this sort of microscopic penalty box of a car. And it really is a good competitor now in terms of size and space to almost everything out there that you can compete against. And we'll talk a bit more about that toward the end of the video. The interior of the Trax, much like its exterior, is less SUV-like than we've come to know and more car-like. In fact, this sits just like a car. My legs are out in front of me and the dash and the windshield are way out in front of me. I just feel like I'm sitting in a sedan from about 10 to 15 years ago, and that's not a bad thing. It's still got a slightly higher seating position, and your vantage point from behind the wheel is higher like an SUV, but your legs are out, your arms are out, and the sense of space in here is a little bit more traditional car feeling. Now the quality of materials in here is actually quite good for being the affordable car, and in our fully loaded active, this has some trim upgrades going on. On the door panels, some nice soft stitch material with some yellow accents. And on these seats, this is the vinyl seating that comes in the top trim grade RS2 as well as the active. It sort of almost has the feeling of leather, but it's definitely vinyl, no question about it. They are a little bit firmer like GM seats typically tend to be. And my driver's seat here does have power adjustments. This is a manual seat over here. The comfort level is okay. After sitting in them for a long day, I was ready to be done. Looking at the dash, this has a pretty good level of standard equipment for even the base model, but here in the fully loaded active, ahead of me is an 8-inch digital instrument cluster and full controls on the steering wheel. That instrument cluster is customizable. You can set 3 different instrument cluster designs on there, and then you can also display other information. Over on the center stack, the big screen infotainment and user interface, and we'll talk about that separately. Down below that is climate control, and then a nice cubby down here where you're going to find a wireless charger for your phone, as well as power ports down there. Traditional shifter, which I always like to have in a car. 2 big cup holders off to the side. Another little cubby down here, and then inside the center console, I would say that space is just slightly larger than a rectangular tissue box if you were to put it in there on its end. And so it's pretty deep. It's just pretty narrow in that way, but that gives you an idea of how much space it has in there. Above me is a sunroof, a power sunroof, and that is one of the options on this car. The second row seating, as you can see, offers a pretty good level of leg room. These seats are set for my height, about 5'9". With my boots on, I've got about 3 to 4 inches of room ahead of my knees. And headroom here as I sit is about 4 to 5 inches above my head. So that is good. Now this is marketed as an SUV, but like I was telling you from up front, this sits like a car, which means the seating position is a little bit lower, and I am sitting down in this much like a sedan, a little bit less like an SUV. That means my knees are perched up just a little bit, and I'm not getting the full support of the seat. And to go along with it, there isn't a whole lot of side bolstering here that can help support me. So what I'm getting at is this is not the most comfortable rear seat in the world, and to that, the amenity level. There's no vents back here. I'm getting a little bit of a breeze from the vents up at the front, but it's almost expected these days, especially here where I live in Arizona, that we have rear seat air vents, especially as we get up into this near $30,000 price tag. Now, these seats do fold down in a 60-40 split, and in that cargo area, you can see there's a pretty good level of space. The height on the door opening is 26.5 inches, and the width between the wheel wells is 40.5 inches, to give you an idea of what that space is back there. Underneath that cargo floor, thankfully, there is a mini spare tire, and that's always better than the fix-a-flat kit, because if you ever cut a tire open or if you have a blowout, that fix-a-flat kit isn't going to help you. Overall, my impression of this interior is that for being the entry-level model for the Chevrolet brand, it's a pretty nice level of not only design and material quality, but equipment. Now, yes, it's missing some features here, even in the fully loaded model. If I were down in a base grade LS, I might be pretty happy with what's here. While I have praised generally the quality materials in here as well as the switchgear, we still do have some hard plastics here and there. This interior gets 4 out of 5 stars. The top-level infotainment system and user experience in here is comprised of an 11-inch landscape-style display, and while it isn't fully featured in terms of a high-end audio system or navigation or a lot of the online concierge services you're going to find in some of the other GM vehicles, it does have quite a few things. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Those are wireless, AM/FM of course, Bluetooth connectivity. Satellite radio is available here. It has a backup camera that works pretty good. Using the menus here is very straightforward. I found that being able to navigate around and find my way and use some of the settings that are in this was very easy. If you've used other General Motors vehicles, it's basically sort of a stripped down version of many of those. The audio quality is, I would say, commensurate with a vehicle in this price range, which is to say it's not bad, but it's not, you know, high-end. This user experience and infotainment system gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, it's finally time to take a drive. So if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're out here in the middle of nowhere, nobody around, and go. Ooh, a little bit slow off the line, but then power comes on. You can hear it working, and 60. There you go, 0 to 60 in the Chevrolet Trax. Now I'm going to turn the air conditioning back on. It's hot out here today. And so power is what I would call adequate. So what's under the hood is something actually a little bit unique in this class. This is a 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder. It has 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque. Also unique in this class, this has a conventional 6-speed automatic transmission, not a CVT. That is a welcome thing. So what do I think about this powertrain? Well, first of all, it's a 3-cylinder, so it's got a little bit of a different sound and feel than a lot of you might be used to if you've come from a 4-cylinder. Not a bad thing, it's just different. And with the turbocharger and the small displacement, it tends to have a little bit more of an on-off vibe. So from a stop like we saw there on acceleration, it tends to be a little bit slow to get up to steam, but once the power comes on, poof, you've got the power. The automatic transmission does a pretty good job of making sure it's in the right spot most of the time, and you do get downshifts, like out here on the open road, to give it the power that it needs. I will say that it could use a little bit more refinement. There's a little bit of noise, vibration, and harshness to speak of here, and that goes with 3-cylinder engines sometimes, especially small displacement engines with an automatic. I find that the transmission tends to be a little bit clunky here and there around town. Now, fuel efficiency, this is rated at 28 city, 32 highway, and 30 mpg combined. In my week with it, I actually got about 26, not quite up to what it talks about on the window sticker. In defense, the air conditioner has never been turned off, except for when I did my 0 to 60 right there. It's been 110 plus all week long. That can play into the fuel economy. The other thing I would say in its defense is that this does have an auto start stop system, which I never really like in any vehicle, but this one does let you have your air conditioner. It doesn't shut the engine off as aggressively as some other brands do, and so when it's hot, it keeps the engine on and lets you enjoy your air. So this engine does bring with it some pluses and minuses. This powertrain gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now for ride, drive, and handling. This is a car that has a much longer wheelbase than before, so if you're comparing it to, say, the old Chevrolet Trax, this has more of a car-like feel. It's longer, it's got more space, it's a much more substantial vehicle. It has a McPherson strut front suspension, and it has sort of a twist beam rear axle at the rear. Front-wheel drive, of course, no all-wheel drive is offered. 4-wheel disc brakes. So it does have a few things that you might not expect at this price, but it does also have a chassis that's pretty simple and cost-effective for GM to build. On the highway, I find that this is a very stable car. The chassis, even though it's very simple in its form, tends to be very competent, especially with these larger tires and wheels. And the overall feel is very car-like. Less SUV, more car, kind of a theme going there. And I like that. It feels a little bit more sporting in that way, especially out here on a windy road like this. It feels a little less top heavy. Out on the road, as far as road noise is concerned, this has a decibel reading at 70 miles an hour on my test strip of 59 decibels, which is dead nuts average. It's not high, it's not low, it's right in the middle of all of the vehicles that I test. It's more wind noise than it is tire and road noise as far as the balance. So it's pretty well sorted in that way. I'm pretty impressed. The only thing I would say is that around town, going over speed humps, potholes, railroad tracks, things like that, because this is a bit more of a simple and less sophisticated suspension system, it does get a little bit more like you're wearing boots on the dance floor than a pair of nice loafers. This chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, we've taken it for a drive. We've had a good look inside and out. Let's talk about, is it worth the money? Now, when it comes to competition in the $20,000 to $30,000 price range, when you look at the least expensive cars from some of its competing brands, what do you get? Well, Ford gives you the Maverick. That's a truck. When you look at Dodge, they give you this Italian SUV thing that's a little bit more expensive, actually. Nissan, the Kicks. Toyota, Corolla. 2 different classes of cars. You got a little SUV, you got a sedan here. This is something in between, I think. And then Hyundai and Kia both offer you actually 2 to 3 different choices in this price range. So that's really kind of another ball game. But this is an interesting choice to me. It's a car. They call it an SUV, but it looks like a car. It drives like a car. It from behind the wheel, it feels like one. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck. And that's a good thing in my opinion. It's nice to see cars coming back a little bit. And we don't have to have SUVs all the time. But I do like the fact that it's a 5-door hatch. It's got the versatility. There's roof racks on top of it, so you can actually use it like an SUV, but front-wheel drive only. It's not necessarily going to be all SUV on you. So that said, when I look at quality, I look at warranty coverage, all the things that make up value for me, in addition to all of those things we've already talked about today, I put value at 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4 out of 5 stars for the review. Definitely worth a look. I find this an intriguing vehicle. Is it on my I'd buy it list? Boy, I'm kind of on, I don't know. It almost went on my I'd buy it list, I'll say that, because I think for the money, particularly at the base level, I think this is a very intriguing choice. It's worth the drive. That's really what I'm trying to get at. So if you like what we do, you can see our latest review right there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.